Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode, late night episode. I wanted to speak about, the title, Diving Deeper into the Potential of Human Psychology. And I was fathoming, in some sense, where the end result of the human effort will lead, and in some sense, what would a humanized universe look like? There are certain points to consider in order for me to try to share about how I feel the psychology is going to evolve. First, there is a cosmological factor. We look at the cosmos and we wonder about the destiny of pretty much the macrocosm and how the big, in some sense, changes and how the small is in that change. When I think about human evolution, when I think about how far human beings will evolve, cosmologically, I know, or it is in some sense due to scientific finding, I would say, in accordance to that, I know, that in a period of, I think it's a couple billion years, that what's going to happen is, like, right now, we are in a local galactic cluster. We are in a galaxy cluster. And what is happening is outside of our local group. It's this strange sort of relationship, I would say, a contribution from Albert Einstein, in some sense, where the fabric of space and time is changing in a way where if you were to tape pennies to a balloon and suddenly blow air in the balloon, the same way the balloon is expanding, in some sense the coins are, in some sense, how would I tell you? It's as if the coins become distant, become further apart from one another. Excuse me. What I'm trying to say is when we look at the universal reality, in a billion years, the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way Galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy is our neighboring galaxy. They're going to, in some sense, as if like two disks intersecting, one horizontal, one vertical. The galaxy is going to look like that. When it comes to our galactic cluster, pretty much when we get to a point where they call it Milkomeda, when Andromeda and the Milky Way galaxy, they intersect, they collide. At that point, all the other galactic, I believe it's the galactic clusters, it's like all the other galaxies would be so far away that the people inside of Milkomeda, the future of two galaxies, will not be able to see any other galaxy. That means there is something in the scientific vision that what moves faster than light is space, space moves faster than light, it means there are certain things that we will never be able to see, and there is this idea, I would say, of the cosmological horizon. What that means is just like we have a black hole, and the black hole has an event horizon, and the event horizon is the point where there's so much gravity inside the black hole that light cannot escape when it enters, but pretty much it's an unknown territory. It's like the outline of the universe is pretty much, I would say, the cosmological horizon. Now, beyond the cosmological horizon, we cannot see what happens. So what that means is, imagine there's a curtain around, the human universe, as far as human beings can see, and beyond that curtain, phenomenology is going behind that curtain, but we can't see what happens to it. Pretty much that's the idea I'm trying to share. So ultimately, in the outer realms, it's like man in existence will continue to exist, maybe potentially as a biological being. Maybe our consciousness will transfer into robotic technology. A scholar by the name of Terence McKenna suggested that there could be a possibility we are the intermediary between the machines. What that means is, like biological life, it was kind of made to, in some sense, bring forth technological life, and the end result is actually technological, not biological. When I wonder about really what human beings can do in existence, pretty much we're going to reproduce everywhere. We're going to preserve as much of we can of our consciousness. And something hilarious, I'll tell you, before we had conscious memory, we didn't care if we changed or not. Like, we have no preference of walking on two legs, right? Human beings don't go in society, like we're walking on two legs and we're like, yo, we should be walking on our hands too. That's how our ancestors used to walk in. Our great ancestors, which was the evolutionary animal, through biology. So what it is that only when we became conscious of what we are, we started having emotions over what we can gain and what we can lose in accordance to that reference point. So what I mean by this is that suffering and joy are recent developments when you look at universal activity. I can agree that the body has been in the furnace of the universe and evolution, billions of years going by for the opportunities and circumstances of biology to arise. However, after biology arose, in some sense, the purpose of reality, it's as if when consciousness noticed it's a biological being, it started valuing everything in accordance to the first thing it became aware of. And it could be that what we are aware of now as ourselves is just the tip of the iceberg towards the presence of universal intelligence. When I wonder, alright, human beings right now, an object became aware that it's a subject. The subject is moving the object by simulating a quicker reality, and then in actual reality we follow it. So the inner realms, like our psychology, is just a faster movement than matter. Therefore we feel like we are moving matter. I would say human psychology is pretty much like a balloon that we are going to blow as much as we can, in some sense expanding its horizon. That means human psychology is going to go all out, probably in an advanced civilization. I mean, I haven't talked too much about a post-advanced civilization era, aside from the fact that we're going to go beyond a point of the language threshold. Pretty much the balloon is going to pop. Humans are no longer going to be humans. Either we're going to enter the void, either we're going to become a singular phenomenology, or we're going to attain some sort of infinite relationship or some sort of infinite immortality. In the future, attaining immortality won't be hard if we consider that the mind is in some sense separate from the body as a dimension, and the mind simulates psychology whether there is a body or not. If we discover such an independence of mind, such a sovereignty of the dimension of consciousness, we may realize that in some sense, whether it's a biological body or whether it's a technological body, the truth that is staring through, in some sense, is unaffected. So in order to attain immortality, we just need to transfer our, kind of eternal vision into the temporary, not temporary, but into a mechanical instrument. That means robots live longer than human beings in a material realm. Or at least have the potential to do so. The human being really is a bag of liquid where within it there's a skeletal structure, and wrapped around that skeletal structure is muscle. And this whole biological instrument, in some sense, is all controlled at once, as if the brain is the captain of the ship. In yogic thought, they felt that there were two minds, not two brains, two minds, in the sense that there was a sort of intelligence arising from your brain, and there was a sort of intelligence arising from your heart. Now, I looked into this a bit deeper, and I realized it wasn't the poetic, loving metaphor, heart energy, love. It wasn't just that. It was in some sense a central position. That means there is something going on in the area of the central chest of the human being that in some sense seems to be another source of information, whether subtle, whether in a way we cannot understand now, but in ancient times they acknowledged a sort of two mind locations, as if the seeds of intelligence, or there were two major channels of intelligent activity. I shouldn't say intelligent activity, but I should say intelligent atmospheres, Human psychology, it is right now in a story format. That means people are saying, I am this kind of person in this kind of world, and I'm living in this time, and we pretty much pinpoint, just like, who was it, Neil Armstrong, who planted the flag on the moon. We are planting our psychology into our bodies, and as the body moves in accordance to it, we feel like we have free will as an individual. But really, the psychology is a simulated state of nature, and what I'm going to say is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who the mystery of the realm is more important than the tenderness of words. Beyond human psychology, psychology, the moment it becomes multidimensional, it means in some sense if our whole life we have lived vertically perceiving, we suddenly have access to the horizontal. The horizontal intersecting with the vertical technically means the birth of three universes. A universe that is vertical, a universe that is horizontal, and then a universe that is the intersection of both. That means if I was to draw a plus sign, a giant plus sign, that central point connects the two lines on the symbol, right? So what I'm saying is that there is one point between two dimensions shared. Now the human mind, which is the engine of psychology, or the human brain, which is the engine of psychology, and the human mind, which is the force, or the result of the engine, I would say is actually our intelligence as a creature is between a vertical horizontal dimension. The vertical dimension, the horizontal dimension, I'll say it this way, the horizontal dimension is our body, just a sort of physical flat, horizon. I shouldn't say horizon, but just a physical sort of realism. And then the vertical dimension is the mind. That means there's a conditional dimension where we have to live in accordance to the elemental structure of the world. And then there is an internal dimension where it's the dimension of the mind, where the world is malleable. What that means is I can use my hand to pick up, like there's a lighter in front of me right now. I can pick up this lighter and hold it in my hand. But I can also close my eyes, and everything I have seen in my whole moment, I could turn it, just like how in, for example, certain softwares on computers, you can change the color of a photo, you can change the contrast, the saturation, the sharpness of the photo. And that's what the mind provides. So really what's going on, it's as if psychology is like a coin, and it has one side being a static dimension and one side being a dynamic, one side being a static being and the other side being a dynamic doing, a sort of dynamism in the sense of like the body. What I'm pretty much saying is subjects are moving faster than objects, therefore suggesting their presence in a dimension that is intersecting the objective dimension, subjects. So what I mean is that one side of human psychology, the free will is watching all the information and deciding in accordance to how the information moves, then it moves. It means a creator dimension and a created dimension, pretty much. So in the creator dimension, we have choice in regards to how we are in the inner world before the outer world. And this is really where the future, if we dive deeper into psychology, we can see what the future will be. Pretty much in the past, things have been created, and then there has been endless waves of new eyes opening their perception in this realm, new eyes opening in this realm. And as this happens, usually, at least the type of society, the type of world we find ourselves in, the past has a huge and extremely loud voice in how the person feels in their present. This can't be ignored, regardless of even the person feels they are so enlightened they don't have to care about time anymore. But really, the past is content. That means even if you strip away a relationship of time with your memories, you will see at the end of the day they are geometry, they're design. That means memories are image, and imagery is filled with color and outline, color and shape. And the inner realms are so magnificent that I would tell you, you can literally see any object in any color, and in your mind you can visualize that object in a different color. But in the outer realms, it doesn't change. This means that our free will is not only in the outer realms. Our free will is actually inside an internal simulation where reality is decided, then its effect is in the outer realm. So the future, I would say that if we dive deeper into human psychology, we will notice that at its core there is emptiness. How would I say it? It's as if stuff is moving in emptiness in accordance to itself. Right now, as I'm giving this talk, like, how am I giving this talk? Literally, ideas are arising in my inner realms, and I'm just vocalizing it, you know. Sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, I'm the man who, you know, put words to images behind his eyes. Really, that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm looking at artwork and I'm just putting it into words. That's why I could take as long as I want to find the words for it, because the artwork remains in the inner realms. That internal cinematic language is there, right? And so in the creator dimension of human psychology, in the free will, you can say, just like an astronaut in outer space has an oxidizer connected to its, like, what do you call it, to its boots or something. So some part of the astronauts, let's say the astronaut fixing something on the top of a space shuttle, right, in outer space. Pretty much there's a part of that system of the suit of the astronaut that releases oxygen, and that creates a thrust for the astronaut to move. Now it's a sort of pressure release, and you can direct pretty much, you know, the astronaut can direct its suit, you know, by the pressure it releases. So the free will, the creator dimension, is really what in some sense moves, and it doesn't move. And yes, in one angle, sure, the free will is moving something, but on another angle, it's like an elevator door, where it's like a button is pressed and reality is, it's like the door is open, and if you don't press the button, it automatically closes, as if we have to keep simulating our identity so we don't forget it in all the waves of information that hit us throughout the day. That creative dimension of the free will, that is really where truth can be. That means truth is not outside. It can't be. That's the issue. It can't be outside, because the outside is being in some sense articulated from inside. It's being projected from inside. So really, the human mystery of psychology is that we don't know where our mind is. That is the deeper, I would say, mystery of our psychology, right? We don't know what the within is. That's the incredibleness, right? We don't know. Like, here's the view. Pretty much one option. There is a material universe, and we are, in some sense, the material. The objective universe is projecting a subjective reality. The other option, which many continental philosophers consider, is that a subjective universe is leading to objective reality, and a subject is not based on an object. That's the power of a subject. That means the concept of emptiness, like, what image can you put for it? What object can you say is empty? You know? Like, for example, a container, sure, we can give it the attribute that it has. You know, it is not full, but I'm telling you, there is no image in the dictionary for emptiness. Like, I don't even know how the dictionary is defining emptiness, you know. So if we were to wonder that psychology that is being simulated causally from the inner and its effect being outer means that intelligence doesn't have to be local to be. It means being is superior than form. You know, if we were, in the subtitle I've written a humanized universe question mark, if we were to envision a humanized universe, it would be really scary. You know, there's a reason every person, we say human beings are social animals. And imagine you were a social animal, but you were a social animal in a world of clones. You went outside to talk to people and you realized they were all you. Do you know what I mean? That would defeat the purpose of society, because whatever we are, due to the urge of wanting to update, you know, we don't want to see the same thing. And I don't mean that people in some sense get tired of who they see in the mirror, even though that's a possibility. But it's just that the mind has been updating itself in accordance to direct experiences. Direct experience is another way of saying new sensory information is entering the system. Because we're a creature that updates in accordance to information, the psychology needs more and more and more information to identify itself, until at some point it realizes all the information is in emptiness. In a humanized universe, it will be, excuse my language, but it will be some like Disney, I want to say some Disney shit, but like, but what I mean by that is that it's like in poetry, there's this term personification, and many poets have given human qualities to objects. For example, my twin brother, who I would say he's a great novelist, even better than me, I would consider, he's written a book where he's personified animals, for example. Similar to that guy who wrote Animal Farm, what was his name? George Orwell. I could be wrong, but anyways, whoever wrote Animal Farm, right, that person was seeing personality in an animal. Now, what is left, it's like just think of it as a sort of whack-a-mole of analysis, where the human being's like, okay, I see my reflection in the mirror, I consider that human, you know, other human beings, I considered them human, you know, when it came to, for example, like, I don't know, Disney objects, I considered human, you know. Then the person, in some sense, looks at their pet, and they talk to their pet like it's a human, right? You know, how many pet owners say, come here, boy, you know, or come here, girl, to their pet, right? So that's a humanized relationship. That's how the human being is subconsciously humanizing things to communicate with it. So imagine we went beyond animals, and like even right now, all those people who are vegetarian, right? That's because they've in some sense stopped dehumanizing animals. You know, when you dehumanize something, you make it into an object. This is why human cruelty in history has been tragic, because the cruelest thing one can do is render another person non-existent. And in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because we're here to be free human beings, and in order to be a free human being, you need to have freedom of expression. We, in some sense, I'm just trying to point out that we are humanizing everything, right? And even in like this is just natural because we understand the human archetype better than anything else because we're being it in some sense, and every day we're looking at it and watching it as awareness, right? So it makes sense that we use the pattern we're most familiar as a sort of main branch to, in some sense, branch off into all the other things that we will understand, you know. And I don't want to even get into how the psychology, if the moment we implement a multidimensional context, can be fragmented AF. What that means is it can be so fragmented that in some sense it's as if the mind is like a light, okay? And in some sense it's as if, imagine it's like a spotlight, and imagine there has been a theatrical performance on a giant treadmill. And this theatrical performance on this giant treadmill is going, but the spotlight doesn't move, and it's like endless reality shifting and changing in the spotlight. It's so remarkable that people are looking for, teachers, not realizing that they are, in some sense, the igniter of their meaning. Psychology is being sculpted by the free will. And the free will is a watcher's reaction. The free will is an invisible watcher's reaction of the inner realm and outer realm simultaneously. It's as if somebody asked me, hey, Mr. Within, what's the point of consciousness? Albeit a consciousness is a translation mechanism. Consciousness is how objects, in some sense, provided a fire, an inner fire. That means man discovered fire in the outer realms, cavemen started freaking out and jumping in the air, and then man discovered fire in the inner realms, which was the light of just being. Consciousness is the fire of the inner realms. Even though man will implement the human algorithm upon everything, that means even if an extraterrestrial lands on Earth, we're going to be comparing it to humans, right? The extraterrestrial is going to be like, you guys won't even see me if I come here. Can you imagine? The extraterrestrial comes here and we look at the extraterrestrial and we're like, yo, this extraterrestrial isn't as cool as a human being, riding a Harley Davidson motorcycle on a highway, And so imagine we ignore the alien because it's not as cool as a biker or something, And this whole humanization, you can say, process, it will go on. It's really our part in the elemental theater. But if I was to think of a time span of, like, let's say, not 100 years, 100 years will still need to be humanized. 1,000 years we need to be humanized. 2,000 years we still need to be humanized. I've predicted in 3,600 years there is a choice that we either pretty much we're in a type of situation where the species has an opportunity and it has in some sense released AI civilization builders. So what that means is we're going to first of all utilize all this three-dimensional space to solve overpopulation. Then we're going to use the outer space as real estate. We haven't got to that point where imagine there's real estate agents, and the real estate agents on a starship, and the real estate agents like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, this giant space you see outside of your window is for sale. Can you imagine? So we're going to, in some sense, either keep swimming in the outer realms and expanding. And this is why love is important, because love is the inspiration for new life to enter the world. It is not just sex that is essential. It is the environment. That means if you want to just bring a biological entity with just a body into this world, yes, sex is important. But when it comes to reproduction of bringing a being, that means imagine all women all around the world suddenly realize, oh my God, we can bring human beings into this world. With that recognition comes the next inquiry of what kind of human beings are we bringing into this world, and what kind of psychology will these human beings have, and how will their psychology integrate with the sort of collective systems approach, And I would say, fast forward 3,600 years from now, we would go beyond the language threshold, and there's 3 ways. Sorry, there's 2 ways, I think. If I remember correctly, there's 2 ways to go beyond the language threshold. One is natural, the other is technological, and I think the third way was emptiness. There's always emptiness is like a parachute, In the chat section, James C says space is not real. And if space is not real, then everything in it is probably not real too, I guess. But I understand what you're saying. You're suggesting how, in some sense, emptiness is the absence of fullness. So there is no emptiness that exists. It's just the absence of fullness, or the illusion of fullness. I believe it's in thermodynamics that air is considered a fluid. Psychology in Vedic thought, I emphasize this often because it's important, has the component of Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter, awareness and matter, right? So psychology is made of this. And I don't want to say that space is not real, because without space, reality has nowhere to find itself. And space is a very deep idea. There's outer space, and I use the term inner space. If I had known this relationship between the inner realm and outer realm when I was younger, guys, oh my God, so many, I would have, in some sense, I regret not knowing this sooner. Many people know they have a mind, but they don't have an intelligent relationship with their mind. The psychology is a comparative thing. right now, when I ask myself how am I being a human being, I'm like, oh yeah, I've lived as a human being, you know. And that's the reference. So it's a reference-oriented system. And the brain is what is projecting and also holding the reference. The brain is like a camera. This camera records and at the same time edits. You know, that's the cool thing about the brain. It is in some sense giving you the final film. And guys, there is this view when it comes to anything. Anything that a person does, just whoever you are listening to me, implement this view if it can serve you. You see, I learned this from Elon Musk, who I consider him as a sort of genius of our time. A visionary. Genius and vision. And Elon Musk, he said this advice to entrepreneurs who are running businesses. And he said something in the lines of like, most people want to start a business and they're like, I want to be successful. You know, law of attraction. I'm just going to think about the best thing only, you know, the best outcome only, you know, a sort of only the finish line. Some people are thinking about only the finish line. But Elon Musk was saying, instead of trying to run a business where you think it's going to 100% succeed, you actually should attempt to run a business where you feel it's going to 100% fail. So that way you don't have emotions about it. So if I right now have this mentality that, oh yeah, 99.9% of species go extinct, you know, oh yeah, you know, if I have that mentality, then there's nothing to lose, because if you're going to lose at the end, there was now nothing ever to lose. You know. But if we can look at a system and be like, all right, it's going to fail, and this is what Elon Musk was saying, how can we reduce every day of our lives the percentage of its failure? And so for me, I have concluded Civilization 1.0 not as a failure, but a system so attached to its past that it can't change. So the only opportunity is for a new system to simultaneously occur. What that means is right now, Civilization is kind of inspiring a certain sort of behavior through people. We need to simultaneously behave in the more advanced way. So imagine suddenly 2/3 of the population, 1/3 first, of the population started behaving like advanced communicators, human beings that were not locked down in dualistic thought, but rather through a multidimensional tolerance tried to understand angles of perception rather than find Thor's hammer of judgment. Because to judge something, it's the easiest thing and requires the least creativity. You just look at what something has and you just reverse it. You know, judgment is the simplest thing. It is in some sense how far the deeper vision of the system is going. You know, that's what I'm waiting, you know, for viewers in cyberspace to start challenging an idea, but with the proposition of what else can fill that challenge. So the species will go through a long-term humanization agenda. We have humanized language, you know, children humanize toys and play with it as if it's like their best friend or something, you know. Guys, reality is a gigantic effort. It's pretty much an arena where creatures have emerged, and if creatures self-serve the realm, you know, that has to be taken into consideration, you know. People feel Edison was a bad guy, but that guy invented the light bulb. It was only in his competition with Nikola Tesla where at the end of his life it seems like he freaked out or something about his reputation. There's always more angles to everything and that includes people. And the whole thing is psychology will go through phases. Right now, our psychology, I'll be honest, has experienced three phases, three dimensions of itself. We have experienced a psychology that's like, again, I've arrived out of emptiness, so the psychology is instantaneously content with its cause, which is nothing to its everything. Then there's a psychology of the singular, and the psychology of the singular being is not that I am eternal, it is that every eternity is how the universe is being, and the I is a part of it. Then there is the dualistic psychology, where right now I'm speaking to you, and pretty much all human beings are using dualistic technology to communicate. If we get to an infinite context, an infinite psychology would be a point where it's as if a hall of mirrors. It would be a simultaneity of minds. That means I don't think we would be able to experience infinity, you know, as our psychology. Like, it's like, I don't know how, if it's going to be possible to perceive an infinite appearing scenery, you know, as like an infinite archetype, or this concept hasn't even been created, but I would say a sort of archetype's relationship with infinity, therefore making it immortal to itself in accordance to the design it is, right? That means if we didn't have consciousness, could it be that we would have evolved from the Homo sapien into something different, and then completely different and total different limb format, facial format, human, like it would be completely different, right? But consciousness has made us hold on to the human idea. And in this episode, I'm pretty much saying, okay, how long are we going to hold on to this human idea, and what will the era, post a human era, even look like, you know? Because the human being is not just a physical body. That means in the future we can make a robot that looks exactly like a human body, you know, like a human being. But is that robot a human being? No, because the human being is known by its relationship with the unknown as well, not just its relationship with knowledge. That means it's hilarious. Right now I have a finite, that means it has boundaries, it ends. I have a finite relationship with knowledge, but from the beginning of my life, and all of us included, have had an infinite relationship with the unknown. That means nobody is bothered by the gigantic infinite unknown surrounding everything that we're living in. You know? Nobody's bothered by that. You know, everybody's very chill. Yeah, the unknown's infinitely around us. What you gonna do about it? You know, it's like we can't do anything about the void. You know, it's just here and we're floating in it. So we have an unknown relationship. We have an infinite relationship with the unknown. Now, if this experientially activates, it's not going to be individual psychology. And I don't know, I haven't made a sort of evolutionary chart for this, but if I was to attempt right now to fathom what the stages would be, and I could be wrong, but I'm just fathoming, just visualizing, I would say this is how it went. Okay? We went from, in one talk I said it, we went from an unconscious world to an unconscious self, just the body obliviously moving in the realm. Then we went to the conscious self, the body became aware it's a body. Then the next thing is the awareness that identified with the body is going to realize the body is a part of the earth. So what is stopping the identification with the collective experience of the universe? By the way, guys, questions are welcome. People don't need to hold back. For me, the greatest way that someone can honor this talk is to, comment on the topics discussed, rather than the speaker. is too easy to accept a failed civilization. It's too easy. You know, it's too easy to accept defeat because it's the least energy path, right? It's the path of least energy. You know, lazy people understand this. You know, even Bill Gates was like, I hire a lazy person to find a quick way of doing something, or the fastest way of doing something. And that means to actually participate in a very advanced future psychology of a multidimensional era where when you walk on the street, there may be human mind groups. You know what that means? That means you may be, okay, I'll give you an example. Imagine there's a busy street and there are 10 people walking, and imagine there's a car accident, right? And one of the people gets injured, right? Let's say two of the people gets injured. One of the people out of those two who got injured was connected to a collective mind, to a fragmented hive mind. It would mean that the moment the collision took place, 4 other people who were connected to that person's hive mind also experienced the crash, but they did not have physical sensations of it. So it could be that a collective mindhood will dawn upon us, you know. Cyberspace is going to usher it in, but at the same time, yogic wisdom has always pointed to it before technology. You know, there is this thing about human psychology where we also have the concept of deception. Maybe I need to speak about this. A person is as deceived as they are far away from a truth that activates their moment in a more efficient way. So that means, imagine in life, it's probabilities every moment. Even right now, as I'm giving this talk, in my inner realms, there's probabilities simultaneously. What that means is, imagine I'm a point, geometrically speaking, imagine I'm a point, and there's like 5 lines suddenly extending from this point. That means there's 5 ways I can see, for example, that I can give this talk or move the direction of this talk or pilot to different topics, you know. Lorna says in the chat section, why do you cough so much? No, I'm kidding. Lorna says, where do you think, you know, that is the collective mind? Like in each of us, or a place of souls. If you were asking the question from a natural being, or let me start from here. If you were asking the question from a technological being, the hive mind would be the program in command. You can say, for the human being, a sort of hive mind quality is survival. We're all trying to get to the next day, and when we wonder why, we don't even know what our mind is, you know? Oh my god, guys, this was on mute and I was just going for it. Of course, beyond the language threshold, this term I've coined, there is no subject. So direct experience is the only thing that seems to be rooted in the unknown and beyond the subject. If we become raw experiences of an unconditional being, we therefore cannot incarnate. So it's hilarious. It's as if there's some beings who are trying to, free themselves from reincarnation, and there's some, you can say advanced spaces of intelligence, poetically collectivized, that they in some sense would love to, in some sense, humanize. And I guess the best thing we can do is just build an epic advanced civilization, advance human communication, so we have given an incredible explorative freedom to realize what human psychology is, and we make that a sort of its own universe. That means we are the ambassadors of the human universe in the galactic void. Ladies and gentlemen, by our design, if an extraterrestrial landed on Earth and hilariously just spoke to one of us, if that one person would be the ambassador of the human design. Let me tell you guys, in life, there's a lot of stimulus. That means in front of your eyes, a lot of things happen that take your attention. Now, it's okay. We have to pay attention to the outer realms and survive in it. But there has to be moments in life where the person puts the whole video game on pause. That means if you truly did this, you would, stop all external interpretations of reality and for a moment just bask in your stillness. And then you'll notice that life is happening in an experiential quality that had never had anything to do with language. And our psychologies, because it's a character and a story, they're pretty language based right now. That means it's hilarious. If we didn't have a body, we would be a character literally an eternal character in a story. Now, if we weren't a character in a story, we would just be a body, an attention in a body. And if we were neither a body or a character, we would just be attention. So there it is, the trio, ladies and gentlemen. There's three modalities. Either self is the truth, either other is the truth, or all is the truth. And these three dimensions, I would say you can call this, Mr.Within's triangle. I wrote a book on this, which was a very strange book. It was more like me being an antenna and just writing words on a piece of paper, but I'll tell you. In it, there was this notion that the left brain hemisphere, which has to do with our analytical intelligence, is actually you can see it with the geometrical relationship of an inverted triangle with a circle in it, and for the right brain hemisphere you can perceive a circle with an inverted triangle in it. In that book called The Great Work, the first book I wrote, I was in some sense explaining the relationship of how nature is containing self, other, and world. And this is fractal. So what that means is the moment you want to see a past life to yourself, you can see a past life to others, and you can even attempt to fathom a past life of a god, as if you were in Greece, you'd be like, how was Zeus as a kid, for example? You know what I mean? Like you could kind of fathom a past to the collective archetype. my sense of knowing, I'm right now observing how I know things, and my sense of knowing is actually on a level of pure being. When I say pure being, I mean that before I input anything, there's just watching as the least energy action. And from that least energy action of watching, vision unfolds. It's so automatic. It's, you know what it is? It's just like air. Oxygen enters our body and leaves our body. It's as if information enters our mind and leaves our mind. And I have a theory which, it's a theory, I would say. I don't know how accurate it is, but I have this theory that when we inhale and exhale, oxygen through the nostrils is going straight to the brain. When oxygen goes straight to the brain, it will have an influence on the brain, and let's say that influence is similar to some sort of activation of something. So every time we inhale, the brain, like an antenna, receives. Every time we exhale, what it has received, we notice. They asked someone what's the sign of intelligence, and that person was like kindness, and the person's like, why do you say kindness? And the person's like, because for how long do you want to be an animal? For how long does our hunger possess our future? Eventually we will stop consuming the inefficient path. I envision in the future, in every corporate space, there has to be a Zen master with a gong. A Zen master, and there has to be a meditation room in every hall, right? And anytime, let's say, a boss fires an employee, and the employee, instead of getting mad and making a show in the workspace, the employee goes into the meditation room and just sits still for 30 minutes, or for whatever amount of time it needs for the mind to, in some sense, ease down from the reality, from the ideological reality that it inhabits. It's like imagine biting into a fruit, okay, and with your teeth going into the fruit. So sometimes I feel it's like the consciousness is biting through information, and when it bites through it, in some sense, it accesses a sort of taste. Now, if this taste is, everything is ultimately information, right? Because it's like the biology exists to take in information. The eyes are designed to have light enter them. The hands are designed to hold things, Our stomachs are designed to digest things. Look at the biological system. There's literally an acid chamber in our stomach that in some sense dissolves the food. That's like a smart strategy of biology. much deeper I can dive into psychology, pretty much it's either it goes to emptiness, either it's omnipresent, either it is just in a dualistic division, either it is infinite, either it's all of them at the same time, or it's like semi-relationships with each, or it's a sort of phase it goes through. That means there's a phase of emptiness, phase of singularity, phase of duality, phase of infinity. The psychology is also like clay, and it is also like artwork. And really what the mind is doing is copy pasting the whole world to itself, manipulating it. In that manipulation, creating for the inner witness an opportunity to access not only sensory information, but the echo of the sensory information in the inner realms, and how the inner realms change that, and then with an updated info, the free will activates. Let me see, what would be my final remarks? Obviously, we need new dimensions. New dimensions come from new behaviors. New behaviors increase. Not that we don't have the new here, but it's just that new behaviors increase if the past does not enforce its truth on the future, because it could not achieve it in the past. Right? So there is ideological systems that sometimes I feel like when we are entertaining an idea from 600 years ago or 10,000 years ago, it's because that idea has not fulfilled its destiny quite. We are as advanced as we are aware of what we are. I hope this episode was helpful. I'll be on Discord for those interested. Much blessings and loss. And thank you for listening.